Good morning, this is your Math Sensei, Mr. Spensei, and this is day 12, domain and range function notation, and this is test review for your test that's upcoming on this Friday. So, first thing, function or non-function? Well, the easiest thing to do is to start off by making a t-chart, x and y, where this is my x, this is my y, and I have negative 3, 10, negative 4, 11, negative 4, 12, and negative 5, 13. In this case, I see that my x's repeat right here with negative 4. So this is a non-function. Domain, it's going to be negative 3, comma, negative 4, comma, negative 5. Please don't write the repeats, and you want to go in least to greatest order. And so this is backwards. So I need to flip this around. So this becomes negative 5, because that's my smallest value, then negative 4, then negative 3. All right. Then my y values, I need to go least to greatest. Unfortunately, they already are, so that's quick. Okay, the next one, function or non-function. Well, let's make the t-chart first. This is x, this is y, this is also x, and this is also y. And I have 4, 5, and 8, 5. I notice that my y's repeat, but it's okay for y's to repeat. When I continue on, I see my x's do not repeat, so this is in fact a function, and my domain is 4, 8, 12, 16. We don't write the repeats, but we do start with smallest. So 5, that takes care of both of those. 10, 15. Also, the next one, 3, 4, 4, 6. I see my 4's repeat. So, and that's the x's. X's cannot repeat. So this is a non-function. All right. And my domain is going to be 3, 4, 6. And my range is going to be 1. By the way, that should have been a negative 2 right there. That's a typo. That should have been 1, negative 2, in which case, my bad, that should be a negative 2. So this should be negative 2 should come first. Check that off. Then 1, then 2, then 3, because remember they have to be in order from least to greatest, and negative 2 is smaller than positive 1. All right, when I look at this function or non-function, I look and my x's do not repeat. By the way, I need to highlight this so I can make a note of this in class. All right, my x's do not repeat. So this is a function. And my domain is simply negative 4, negative 2, 1, 2, and 4. And my range, once again, least to greatest, I have to start with negative 3, check that off. Then I have negative 2, check that off. Then I have negative 1, check that off. And then I have 5 and 6. All right. Sometimes this really helps to label these as X and Y, X and Y, X and Y, X and Y, and X and Y. So it wants to know if it's a function or non-function. Let's take a moment and let's draw a t-chart. We've now labeled our X's and Y's. And I see I have a negative 5, 6, a negative 6, 4, a 2, negative 3, a 9, 8, and a 9, 1. I see that these 9's repeat because there's a repeating in the x's. This is a non-function. All right, our domain, starting with the smallest, that's negative 5. That's not our smallest. Our smallest number is negative 6. Check that off. Then we have negative 5. Then we have 2, and then we have 9. We do not record the repeats. On the y's, our smallest value is negative 3, followed by 1, followed by 4, followed by 6, and followed by 8. All right, let's do another one of these just like that. Labeling X, Y, X, Y, X, Y, X, Y, X, Y. We have negative 6, 7, negative 9, 2. Just a moment. Sorry about that interruption. So we got to negative 9, 2. Then we have 9, negative 5, 1, negative 7, and 6, 2. I look at these and my x's do not repeat, but I need to list them in order from least to greatest. My least one is negative 9, so I check that one off. Then I have negative 6, check that off. 1, 6, and 9. My range started with my smallest is negative 7, then negative 5. My twos repeat. I do have repeating twos, but y's can repeat, so we don't worry about that. But I only need to write them down once. So the twos, that takes care of the twos. And then we have 7. All right, so that takes care of that. Moving on to the next. All right, function or non-function? Well, vertical line test, if I can hit it more than once, and this time I can hit it more than once, so this is a non-function. All right, so we're going to start off by doing domain. Domain is going to be the smallest. We're drawing to the x-axis, but furthest to the left. Well, furthest to the left in this case, you know what? Let me use a color or a highlighter because it shows up better. Furthest to the left there is at negative 4. And that's a solid line, so it gets a solid dot, which means it gets a less than or equal to. And furthest to the right is positive 5. And it's also a solid dot. So basically, it could be any value within this range, within this area, or within this distance. So this is a 5. That's a solid dot, so it gets a less than or equal to. And remember, domain is the x's. Range is the y's. And we always start at the bottom or at the lowest value and we draw to the y-axis. In this case, our smallest value is negative 3 and it's a hollow. Hollows get a less than. When we draw to our highest value, which is positive 5, and that's a solid. Solids get a less than or equal to. So it can be numbers within this distance. So we have negative 3 less than y less than or equal to 5. All right, the next one, we have to be careful with this next one because it has an arrow. All right, so we'll have to consider that arrow very carefully, but we're going to start off with farthest to the left, and remember, domain is your x's, and farthest to the left is negative 5. So whenever it's domain, we draw to the x-axis. So our lowest value is a negative 5. It happens to be a solid line, so it gets a less than or equal to. So we have negative 5 less than or equal to x. And then we have this arrow we have to deal with. Well, what's this arrow doing in the x direction? Well, it's continuing to go this direction. Well, what direction is that? Positive infinity or negative infinity? Well, it's increasing, so it's going to infinity. So less than positive infinity. But remember, we're not allowed to have infinity, so we mark that off. And now we have negative 5 is less than x, but the variable has to be on the left, so we have to flip it. And that's our answer. All right, the range, that's the y values. I disagree. The range is the y values, and the lowest value happens to be negative 2. And we see that because we draw to the y-axis. So we're going, negative 2, excuse me, negative 8. So negative 8, and that's a hollow. And hollows get a less than symbol. And our highest value, well, in the y direction, this is increasing, although slightly, it's increasing, and it's going to go to positive infinity. I should put an arrow on this because this is going to that way. So in this case, -8, excuse me, -8 is less than y is less than infinity. Once again, we cannot have, that's supposed to be an infinity symbol. We can't have infinity, so we cross that out. And we have to flip it so that the variable's on the left. And so we end up with y is greater than -8. And look at it, y is all the values greater than -8. All right, once again, we have an arrow, so we got to be careful with that arrow. So in this case, we're going to start off with the x-axis again because we're working with domain, and domain is going to be the x. And we're going to draw to the x-axis, which is at -4. And at -4, we happen to have a hollow, and a hollow is a less than sign. So we can start off with -4 is less than x. Well, this arrow continues on, and in the x direction, it's going to positive infinity. So less than positive infinity. But we can't have infinity, so we cross that out. And we have to flip it so that the variable's on the left, and we have x is greater than -4. The range or the y values, we have to start with the lowest value. Be careful because the lowest value occurs right here at -1. So -1 is a hollow, and it's it's a solid line. That's a solid, and solids get a less than or equal to. So -1 is less than or equal to y. In the y direction, this is definitely increasing, so it's going up to positive infinity, which is this way. And infinity always gets a less than symbol. But we cross this part out because we can't have infinity, and we have to flip it because we always have to have the variables on the left. Remember, you don't have to flip if the variable's already on the left. Okay, on this one, we have individual points. Oh, and by the way, is this a function or non-function? I need to go back and answer that. Boom, I hit this more than once. I get money, but this is a non-function because I hit it more than once. When I draw this, no matter how many times I draw a line, I'm only hitting it one time. So this is a function. When I come over here, I only hit one dot. Now I hit two. As soon as I hit two dots, this becomes a non-function. All right, the easiest way to do this is to make a t-chart, and I hope I have room for all these points. X values, Y values. So I have a -5, 3. Then I have a -4, 3. I have a -2, -1, a -2, 2. A 1, 3. A 2, 4. And a 4, 2. All right, the reason this is not a function is because these -2's in the x repeat. So my domain is -5, -4, -2, 1, 2, 4. My range, we always have to start with the smallest, and the smallest value is 3. Excuse me, -1. Smallest value is -1. Then we have a 2. We have a couple of those. Then we have 3 3's, but we only write it down one time. And our last value is 4. All right, we'll continue with the notes in the next video. Appreciate you watching, and I hope this helps a lot, and look forward to seeing you on the next one. Thank you.